Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body Broadcast with Austin and Marty, and we are going to do our one of our periodic Q&As. We tend to do every 3 to 5 episodes.
Yep.
And if you guys haven't got in on these, I typically post them on my social media, so that's where you can find them if you follow me. We filled up quick. We got quite a few questions, and we will jump over on the Instagram thread and go ahead and start knocking these out for you guys. So our first question is from Paula. So there you go.
There we go.
You're Paula. She goes, what the fuck is a net carb?
Ha!
Yeah, she goes, can I really eat 5 pieces of the thing that is 8 net carbs, even if the total carb count is 40?
Love it. Love it.
Good question.
Oh, man. Because you know what? I thought this one was dying. I thought this was going away because that was usually coming on what? Mostly protein bars or meal replacement bars was impact carbs, net carbs, total carb. Oh, my God. Yep.
But you know what, though? I think it went away for a while because it kind of came about like with the Atkins diet and the low carb diet. But I think it came back a lot when they started adding a lot of like the prebiotic fibers and stuff to the bars and things. And now, because I don't think now they're using as many of the like the sugar alcohols that they used to use. That would make you like the sorbitol and and their mannitol, and there's a bunch of them. But now they're using the prebiotic fibers. So like those the oligosaccharides that they use in the Quest bars. So it'll have like 24 grams of fiber.
Oh my God. Yep.
So funny thing is, like, when you look at those, if you look at the fibers that they're typically adding, they're almost always, those are like the soluble corn fiber. And technically, if you want to get real sciencey about it, the soluble fiber still ferments in the gut and it has caloric value. So you will digest it. It's not going to just pass through like insoluble fiber. So insoluble fiber would be like the gristly stuff you get in like a celery or broccoli.
That's right.
Like the really hard fibers. Those don't digest. They'll pass. But pretty much all the net carb stuff that you see, I would just be leery of it because, again, a lot of it's going to be soluble fiber. So it is going to ferment in the gut. It is going to have a caloric value. You will digest it. So it's hard to say. What I typically would tell people is, I said, unless you're 100% sure of what the composition is, like what they're saying, what they're excluding, then I would count it. The only exception to that would be, the only exception I typically make on that myself and with people if they know what they're looking for is, now you see that that sugar alcohol, the erythritol that they add to a lot of stuff. And it is actually only 0.2 calories per gram, which is nothing. So, I mean, I'm trying to think of an example that even has it. I know it's in some of the Quest bars. Actually, okay, so it's in a lot of the drinks. Like do you guys have vitamin water?
Yes, sure do.
Okay. So they use it in vitamin water, at least they used to, and it would say 0 calories, but it would say 8 grams of carbs. And those are all, most of the drinks that are sweetened, they're sweetened with that erythritol, and I don't even count it because, again, even 8 grams times 0.2, what is that? 1 point something calories. Yes. Yeah. I mean, but that would pretty much be the only exception. And you're really only going to run into this stuff too. Like a lot of people that do flexible dieting might run into this, if they're just trying to insert foods and they do a lot of protein bars and stuff. But I try to have people minimize that stuff to maybe one day anyhow, just because you're running into too many variables. It's going to start messing with your digestion at some point.
Big time. Yeah.
So I would just say if you're in a bind, those things are okay. But I would probably count everything that's in it unless you 100% sure know like what kind of fiber's in it. I'd probably count it.
Well, even then, my take on it, like I've got really nothing super big to add other than there's no way, shape, or form that net is the total amount. There's no way. Like even if we were to add up that 0.2 or whatever, but like unless you're gonna somehow be able to take that bar or that whatever the product is that has this magical fiber in it. I call it the man-made fibers. They like maltitol and all the other ones, and it is like when I eat those things, sometimes it feels like my stomach has just eaten a brick. And yeah, to have that be even I don't want to say a staple of your diet, but let's say a regular part of your diet, you are going to throw off digestion. You are going to throw off how you feel. You are going to throw off your fiber levels, especially if you're paying attention to how much fiber, and because that's the thing, boys and girls, is you don't want to have this astronomically high amount of fiber, whether it's soluble or insoluble, floating around you, because that can cause just as much issues as no fiber. So when you do these things, it's basically the company trying to say that we are a lower calorie bar than what we are. It's like just like how BCAAs were masquerading, saying they don't have any calories because of a loophole. It's the same thing here. They're allowed to put net carbs on there, and it's just it kind of makes me sad that this is coming back, because I know keto now is a huge thing again. So now that's probably one of the other reasons why we're seeing impact carbs, net carbs versus whatever carbs are coming about, But no. So the answer, in my opinion, is yes. You still have to count all of the carbs anyway. Just treat them like they're being counted, and unless Austin said, unless you know exactly what every gram down to the microgram of fiber is in that product, I count everything.
Yeah. It sounds like we're on the same page there.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Cool. So next one is, and you can hit this one first if you want. It is ways to remain objective when looking at yourself, looking at your own physique during prep, even if you're working with a coach. So, okay. Yeah, because inevitably, people talk about being objective when you prep yourself, but you have to be objective enough to provide like at least decent feedback to your coach as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a good one. Go.
So, yeah. Well, one of the ways, this is how I've been, I think it's been at least 2, maybe 3 years, the way I've been rigging my assessments up is I will have clients, if we use weight as a gauge, I won't have them weigh themselves or take photos of themselves the day of their assessment. So I'll actually have them do their assessments the day before, and I'll have them do their weight and their photos the day after in the morning. And the reason why this is because I don't want them to be convoluted by those external factors. I want them to go completely off of biofeedback and internal factors, like as in how was their sleep, how was their week at work, how was their relationships, whether it was family, platonic, romantic, and so that they can kind of verbal diarrhea, which I really like. I love how much my clients will give me back on there. And if it's like I ask some pretty in-depth questions most of the time, because I feel that's what we need to get the true feedback or the true objective data that we need. And so and I find that if when I was having people take their photos and give me their weight the morning of their assessment while they filled it out, that would completely taint how their last week or 2 weeks were. So that's one way that you can definitely do it is just don't set yourself up to be able to fail in that regard. So that was one of the really good tactics I would do, or especially if you are truly going off of just yourself and your own feedback, is you've got to work around the scale. You've got to work around the photos. Like you got to say to myself, okay, did I sleep 5 hours this night versus 8 hours this night? And really kind of be able to use your critical thinking or your objective thinking in having this come into the data that you're going to be providing back. Because if you wake up and let's say it is now 7 o'clock in the morning versus 5 o'clock in the morning, and the lighting's different, and you're taking your photos in your kitchen or something like that, or in your living room, and now the sun is shining in a different angle, and it's going to make you look differently. That's the way it is. That's why how to take a proper progress photo is so reliant on the same room, the same lighting, the same swimsuit or same pair of trunks or same bikini all the time, because that stuff matters. Because yes, as soon as you change the lighting, that's why there are filters on apps, because as soon as you do that, you're changing everything. like I know there's there's sharpness on things now. There are apps like that, Facetune and whatever. There are Photoshop that will completely change everything. Like I've seen people look like complete crap that look great, and then vice versa. And I think it was Dusty Hanshaw that said, if you look like crap in bad lighting, that means you look great in crap lighting. You're going to look really, really good in great lighting. So with your tan and everything else. So that's one way to kind of be objective about it. It's just going to take time to really kind of know that, because if you've had a bad day at work, or you've had a bad day at the gym, or your numbers went down, then that's going to actually translate into how you physically look at yourself too. In terms of just, you might not have hit the numbers like a PR or something, and you'll go look at yourself. Whereas if you might look the exact same as if you did hit the PR, or you did hit like some good numbers on your weights or whatever, it's going to completely change how you look at yourself. If someone keyed your car, or if you got a flat tire on the way to the gym or something, that's going to also alter potentially how you look at yourself. So being able to use that critical thinking, like I said, is so mandatory. And that's why coaches are even like I believe the term came from a couple guys I knew in the bodybuilding industry. Like a good second set of eyes are going to be very, very, very helpful for you, especially if you're doing an extreme transformation or getting ready for a contest show. Whereas, yes, this is for the most part a very independent sport in terms of like, you have to do the work, you have to do the workouts, you have to eat the food, you have to not eat the food, you have to do the cardio. But having someone else that's rational, that's objective, that is not going to feed your fire either one way or the other towards a negative or positive, is so invaluable. So that's kind of my little splurge on that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just understand. I mean, I think understanding what the feedback actually means.
Yeah.
Like what does this tell me? What does this tell me? Should I even pay attention to this? Maybe also not being too short-sighted on things, not worrying about one day that is a little bit off, or one weight, or one, whatever. And I like what you said about updates as well, of having all the variables as consistent as possible.
Yeah.
I obviously, like, we talk about flexibility and stuff within food and I like to try to be flexible within other things too, like how someone performs cardio or, different things. But to a point, if you're somebody that struggles with that objectivity, that might not be the best thing for you. You know what I mean? Like, just because too many things are moving around. Mm-hmm. It can be stuff like the people that I use, step counting with. Well, they want to do 900 different things to get their steps in. I'm like, well, it's probably not going to be accurate. This thing might make you sore, or this thing might stress you out, or you just gotta be aware of anything that's changing. Literally, just think, and that's how I talk to people too in the updates. If there's a problem, normally anything that's short term, like let's say last week was good, but this week we have X problem arise. I'm like, okay, let's trace backwards. What happened? What happened here, and here, and there's always something.
Yep.
There's always something. So, and that's an easy thing a client can do for yourself. And you might not even be 100% nail it, but you could just say, hey coach, my weight is up today, but I'm thinking back and this and this happened. And I'm probably, myself or Marty or whoever is probably going to be able to say, yep, that's probably it. Or no, maybe we should investigate a little bit further. But yeah, just retracing your steps is good. And as funny as it sounds, they say, that he asked when ways to remain objective when looking at your own physique. Don't look at yourself that much if you have a coach.
Definitely. Yep.
Seriously. I mean, especially during times when you're most vulnerable. And I would say those would be right when the prep starts, when you're in that like fat and flat phase. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't want to look at yourself then till you get a little bit leaner, and other than like take your photos or whatever. And then late, like really deep into the prep, if you're having issues with that, be selective on the times you look at yourself as well. If you're in a bad mood, you don't lift your damn shirt up in front of the mirror.
Sure.
Just don't do it. You know what I mean? Like let the objective eye look at you. So yeah, that's a good question.
Yep. Very much so. I like that.
Cool. So let's move on to next one. All right. This one is about fat. Okay. I feel like we may have talked about this before, about fat loading for a show. I'm assuming it's for a show. It says, let me make sure. I asked too, because they said fat loading for somebody that doesn't respond well to carbohydrates, and I assume that they mean fat loading for the actual contest. Let me look at their reply here to make sure I'm getting the right.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. So fat loading for the, during the final week before the show. So, they say for somebody that doesn't respond well to carbs. Well, here's the thing, like fat in and of itself is going to refill the intramuscular triglycerides, and then your carbs will refill your glycogen. You can, like, for somebody that doesn't respond well to carbs, maybe from there could be a couple scenarios. Somebody that doesn't just metabolize them well or doesn't need many carbs, they just won't need a load on many carbs. That's just the thing. They just won't need, they just need a lot less than somebody else. But at the same time, I think that too, if there's somebody that's been very, very restrictive on carbs throughout the prep, then there's always that chance that if you try to introduce, even if they're really depleted and they need the carbs to fill out, if you're trying to introduce copious amounts and you haven't been eating them, then that's also another, potential issue. Like, are you even going to digest them well? If you've basically been starving someone for the last freaking 6 weeks, of course their glycogen is nothing. But at the same time, if I put 1,000 grams of carbs in there, is it going to, are they going to digest all that? Probably not. Right. Or do I want to risk it? Especially if we haven't had a chance to test it out, or we're not doing or we haven't had like large refeeds or something where I at least have an idea of how it's gonna, what's gonna happen. The fat, you could look at the fat as kind of a safety net. You could cut down on the amount of carbs that they need, and then by adding some of the fat in there, so it still gives you the fullness without the risk of the digestive issues. And then on the flip side, there are also people that do not digest fats well, and if they have been eating super low fats in prep, I'm not going to have them eat 150 grams of fat in a day, because their digestion will slow down to nothing.
Yes.
And they'll have, so it's going to cause basically the same issue. But again, I think there's just a lot of context there, actually.
Yes.
For me to say, but yeah, you can, I'd say a good rule of thumb is if you are going to use fats, you're probably going to require less carbs.
Absolutely.
Yep. So if you want to use them both, I would probably use them on separate days. Something like fats, some fat on a Wednesday, some carbs on a Thursday. That way, if digestion is a little bit off, you have that Friday before your Saturday show to let things kind of clear out. Mm-hmm. Gives you that safety net. Or you could do the carbs first and then the fat second. It'll work both ways. But if for a fact whether it's carbs or fat and you don't respond to something and you want to load for a show, I just would not be loading on Fridays before a Saturday show.
You got it. Yep.
Yeah, because regardless of what you're putting in there, if you're worried about your digestion messing up and holding water and what have you, then just don't put yourself in that situation. Leave your Friday as like your cleanup day, if you will. So
the only things I'll add to that is just, why are you asking the question in terms of why do you find that you're carb sensitive or you don't do well with carbs, or why do you find that you're doing not so well with fats versus if you are? So have you tested this out? And like, so what does that mean? Does that mean that you've done some form of carb load in the past and it hasn't worked out? Or have you done some form of fat load in the past and it hasn't worked out, or it has worked out? So and that is having that, we'll say, detailed journal of what you've done for trial runs or past shows is invaluable. I ask that of all of my clients when they want to jump on stage. I'm like, what did you do last time? What did you do for your peak week? What did you do for your loading? What happened on the Wednesday? What happened on a Thursday? How much water did you drop? How much water didn't you drop? How much carbs did you have? What was your protein level? How were your vegetables? Because that all matters too. But I'll say a pretty good rule is to not have both in high amounts, like having a very high carb and a very high fat. That's not the way to do it. One of them will make you spill for sure. And I agree entirely with what you said about if you've been using a certain food or a certain macronutrient, do not all of a sudden jump at your body out of nowhere and pump that into you. Because to have equal amounts of both carbs and fats in your diet during a contest prep is usually not the standard. I know I've seen people with it, but it's usually not. I'm more of an I will take fats out predominantly before I'll take carbs out kind of guy. That's what I know that my clients like to run off of. They feel better, they look better, but I know people that do usually more of a ketogenic style approach, and sometimes that works for them. That's great, fantastic. I'm not going to sit here and bash and say don't do keto, because I've seen people do great success with that kind of style of dieting. But throwing curveballs at your stomachs, like such as these things, you'll hear of pie filling, you'll hear of cheesecake, you'll hear of whatever, and your body has not seen pie filling or cheesecake for 16 weeks of prep. That's probably not something you want to start implementing the day or two before your show. This is when you start seeing the really big F-ups that we're talking about here, and I know Austin can echo me when I say that too. And sure, that might sound exciting or sexy when you hear, oh, I get the cheesecake the night before the show. I'm like, when's the last time you've had a piece of cheesecake? And then if I get a response like, I usually don't ever eat cheesecake, maybe once at my cousin's wedding 5 years ago. Well, that might be a pretty big sign that that's not something you want to throw into, because here's the thing, boys and girls, is you can feed or refeed or load on foods you've already been having. And some of the most successful preps I've seen, you do not need junk. If I can repeat that again, you do not need junk to fill out. Your body can fill out very damn good on white rice, on oatmeal, on sweet potatoes. Just your body's going to love what it's been having because it has the enzymes ready to go for this stuff. So if your body's been seeing fats, in particular has been seeing walnuts, then maybe load on walnuts or have that be a staple in your loading phase. If you've been loading on sweet potato, now is not the time to start loading on white bread because maybe you actually do have some kind of wheat sensitivity or something like that. So everything that Austin said, I agree with, and I don't have much more to add than just keep asking yourself those objective questions, or the data details, we'll call it, as in when's the last time I've had this food, how well does my body do with this food? Because let's just say I'm pretty sure nobody's going to do well on loading with dairy, so I would not recommend any kind of dairy load, and thank gosh you don't see that often. But just that's an example, is that if you think it's so ridiculous to be loading on dairy, I think it's just as ridiculous to be loading on foods that your body hasn't seen in months or years.
Yeah, that kills me. I'm like, why are you going to eat this? And it's the same thing with everyone thinking that they have to go get some gigantic, ridiculous meal between prejudging and the night show or whatever. I'm like,
yep.
You might need it, but a lot of the time, you just don't. You really don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Right. Next question is, all right, high and low days versus a linear approach to calorie intake during off season. Do you feel it's better to keep calories above maintenance on training days and slightly under on your rest days? So I'm guessing they're asking, that would be a pretty extreme caloric rotation, though, if you're actually going under maintenance on. I have some thoughts on that, but you can go ahead and start.
Sure.
This is yours.
I feel as if the going under on your calories on any day during your off season is not ideal by any stretch. I forget who first put this out, but what they're almost trying to do is trying to lose fat on their off days, which are maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 per week, depending upon how many days they pick for their training cycle. Whereas in the other 4 to 5 to 6 days, they're having above and beyond their calories. Where it's just what's the goal of the off season is to put on as much muscle with as limited amount of fat as you can. And if you have some days where you're actually hitting below maintenance calories into an actual deficit, that's not conducive to what your goal is by any means, or any shape or form. So now if you want to be maintenance or above maintenance in a surplus, and then above those calories into more of a surplus on the training days, that's fine. I implement that with some of my clients, but I'm definitely more of a fan of a more linear approach with potentially some more food on training days, just because it's gonna dip into their expenditure. Because now if I have 300 to 500 calories above and beyond their maintenance, and we're trying to gain weight, and then they do burn more calories because of their weight training protocol, their more steps during a certain day or whatever, yeah, I will push their calories up more on those days to kind of negate that out, so they're not so they are taking advantage of the off season entirely, so that they are having enough calories to rebuild and repair muscle protein synthesis and everything else. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of advantage to go, unless you're going to have a period of a diet break, where sure, every 8, 12, 16 weeks during your off season, you want to have a 2 to 3 to 4 week of a caloric cutback to either baseline your insulin sensitivity, or maybe potentially to get a little bit of fat come off you because you've got a little bit too much, you've overshot your calories for that long. Sure, then, but to try to micromanage that in terms of swinging back from a deficit to a surplus on the off season, I think that's a little bit too much micromanaging. I don't think it's the best approach at all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because I think when people hear calorie cycling, that they think like calorie cycling to prevent fat gain, I think that they think we're like going super, super, super low on the non-training days. No, like you said, pretty much all you're doing is just offsetting the fact that you're not training.
Yeah.
That's really it. And training doesn't burn thousands of calories.
Mm-mm.
It just doesn't. So at least not the type of training that we're doing. So yeah, I mean, rotating down, and a lot of people will use carbohydrates, right? Because it's easy to take out, because, you're not burning through the glycogen. And again, guess what? You don't burn that much glycogen while you're training either. Right. You burn some, certainly, but you're not blowing through 500 grams of carbs or anything astronomical. So, I would say typically, and I use this type of rotation a lot, but what I'm typically doing, again, is just basically offsetting the fact that they're not training, their caloric expenditures a little bit lower. I'm not going to in most cases, I'm not going to pull out both carbs and fat, because I still want some kind of energy substrate for the day for them to, function on. And yeah, and it might be something in the range of 300 to 500 calories, where, it may be a little bit more above or below that type of range. It's not going to be thousands of calories. So, yeah, I'm pretty much on board with there. If we're going to use any kind of calorie cycling like that, that would be fine. I don't see any reason to go into an actual calorie deficit, though.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
You got it.
All right. Next one is, actually, this next one we did a whole entire episode on, I think, and how to make the most out of a growth or bulk phase. And we did a whole episode called "How to Make the Most Out of Your Off Season." Was that the?
I'm pretty sure that's the exact title. Yep.
Yeah. So I would suggest listening to that episode. But if I were just to bullet point it, couple things, or a handful of things, try to remain insulin sensitive. don't overshoot your body fat, but have enough body fat to function and perform well. Have some type of gauge of progression in the gym. Try to manage, of course, all the normal biofeedback stuff. Try to manage stress and sleep, and don't neglect those things. Have a plan. Have an actual plan that, like I said, that you can consistently track your progression and progress on. Those are probably the main takeaways: keeping your body responsive and having some type of progressive scheme.
That's it, baby. You nailed it. I got nothing to add. That's perfect.
I think we literally talked about this for like a whole entire hour episode. So I would just go back and reference that off-season episode.
Yeah,
for sure.
Big Shane will be able to hit that for us in the show notes there. No problem.
There you go. Perfect. All right. The last one here on Instagram is the use of KSM 66, so the ashwagandha extract. They said intra workout. Now I don't know. So I'm guessing they want to know if it's more beneficial to use intra workout or what the timing is. I guess I kind of understand what they're saying. Like it helps your body with the stress response. So you would use it around a stressful period, but I don't think that you have to go as far as to put it in your intra workout drink.
This is the first time I've ever heard this. So yeah.
I'm assuming that's probably why they're saying intra workout, but no, I don't think it's just helping with overall stress response. The thing with that is ashwagandha is not like, it's not just a supplement that you use to modulate like cortisol response,
right,
for example. And the thing about training is you get people talk about cortisol levels. Pretty much the only time that I want to keep my cortisol levels up is when I train.
Yep.
And now I'm not saying like artificially putting them up, but that's the one time that I'm not really worried about if my cortisol levels go up, because that's what gets you going to train anyhow. If anything, being in that sympathetic state, like the heightened state, that's what I want around training. If I'm going to take stuff like the KSM 66, I'm going to take it away from training. I'm going to take it in the morning before I get my day going. And I'm going to take things like the ashwagandha at night. I probably wouldn't take it around training. So
yeah, no, there's going to be no benefit to having tried using it to mitigate that. Like exactly like Austin kind of nailed it there, saying that everyone's kind of bastardized cortisol as this always bad hormone, where we've gone over in a couple podcasts too, where it's actually you bottoming out your cortisol at all times is not beneficial at all. And that is one of the key times where you wouldn't want to have that stress response be gone in that regard is around training. So yeah, that's how I work it too. Usually 300 milligrams in the morning, 300 milligrams at nighttime. And then train in the afternoon is kind of like, if you were to be like an ideal situation, that would be it for sure. But yeah, that's I've got nothing to add there, man. That's perfect.
Cool. All right. I think let me scroll down here, but I think that might be the last one on that thread. And then we just had a couple more.
Sure.
Make sure. Yep. That's the last one there. So we'll jump over to the other thread and knock out these last couple here. Okay, so where are we at here? All right. Glucose disposal agents, how to take, as in with what meals, and how many carbs should be in a meal before I would consider adding them. And then they also said, this is a good question, are they a waste of money if you're not insulin resistant?
Ooh.
I like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want to do that one first, or you want me to do it?
You go for it on first on that one. I know this is you and Joe especially have had lots of really good thoughts on this stuff.
Sweet, that works. Well, I don't think that here's the thing. I don't think that it's necessarily, there's like a set amount of carbs that you have to do it, because the thing is, like, supplements aside, everyone's pancreas has a little bit different ability to handle carbs. So to say like, yeah, if you have 50 grams of carbs in a meal, you need a glucose disposal agent. That's not really accurate, because everyone's endogenous insulin production is going to be totally, totally different. It's all over the board. So I wouldn't say that. What I would say is, if you're going to use them, this is kind of one of those supplements that a good GDA does have merit and it can help. But it's not going to be like the very first thing on my budget,
right?
Like my hierarchy of, supplements. So, but if you're going to include it, I would honestly just eat it with all starchy carbohydrate meals. So things like that aren't vegetables,
Yep.
Because in reality, like most people these days, a lot of people are doing some type of carbohydrate timing. You know what I mean? Like they're doing, like they eat it around their training, or they have pre-workout or whatever. So you're really probably, I don't think a lot of people, and some people do, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people aren't doing the traditional, like eat 7 meals a day with carbs in every single meal anymore. Just a lot of people just don't do it. Now you could, and you could have a GDA at every single meal, but I would say just a general rule of thumb, if you're having more than maybe 25 to 50 grams of a starchy carbohydrate, then go ahead and use your product in that meal. Timing, just take it with the meal. I ask people like, do I need to take it 20 minutes before I eat? Are you really going to sit and I'll do that all day long, every day?
Yeah.
Like, no, just take it with before you eat the damn meal. That's how I do my supplements. I have a pill divider, and it just goes with the meal. Before I eat, I take the pills, I eat, and I go on with my day. So, that's what I would say on that. Now, what I really like about this question is actually that last part. Are they a waste of money if you're not insulin resistant? That's actually probably the most important part of the question. And so in reality, you're probably going to benefit from a glucose disposal agent or sensitizing agent, in a caloric surplus, because that's when you're going to become insulin resistant. By the time you get to a pretty lean state and calories are low, you're pretty much a walking GDA at that point.
Yes.
If you're walking around, and I just literally did a post, like 2 or 3 posts about this the other day, about people with high blood glucose when they're lean, and it's almost never food related. It's normally stress or digestion or, something secondary. So if you're not insulin resistant, if you're in a leaning phase or a contest prep and you're getting closer to a show, you likely don't need them. I mean, hell, at that point, you're probably not even eating that many carbs anyhow. So, maybe like when you have a refeed, go ahead and use them for your refeed, or you're carbing up for a show. You could use them with your meals when you carb up. Unless you have a disposable income, then just use them anyhow. But off season, for sure. Yeah, I mean, anything that can help stave off that insulin resistance is going to be helpful, right? It's just going to keep you a little bit leaner, a little bit longer. So that would probably be my take on it.
Yep. No, that's exactly it. I've tinkered around with them for people in the years, and some have some really good formulas out there in terms of supplement companies. Some people will use just the standard products themselves, like berberine, ALA. But yeah, the only time I think you should be concerned about that stuff at all is when you are into a deeper off-season phase, when carbs have been fairly high. Food has just been fairly high for a considerable amount of time. And then are you actually insulin sensitive, or are you just throwing supplements at yourself to throw supplements at yourself because it's a good idea? So just getting a blood glucose meter, checking it, making sure that you're in your ranges is a great way to really kind of throw the anecdotal evidence out of the way and get yourself some analytical data for it. But yeah, just Yeah, like everything that Austin said is bang on for that, and it's been my thoughts for yet on years. And yeah, it's not by any stretch at the top of my supplement priority list, unless I'm in a very, we'll call it, serious or heavy off season phase with quite a bit of caloric excess. So, yep, that's about it for me too, man. That's it.
Cool. Rock on. Okay. We have two more here, and it looks like one of them I think we already answered. So let me.
Sure, we can do just the one more.
When staggering, so when staggering calories on training versus non-training days, what to do to find a good variance? So I mean, we pretty much already, we already did that one
for the most part. Yeah, like it depends upon your training, right? I would say if you. Like, are you doing an intense workout? Are you doing just like a circuit training? Like, are you think you're burning around 100, 150 calories per day? Are you burning 300 extra calories per day or whatever? So that would be your gauge there. And then if you're in off season, you can kind of make it up for that and then make up protein, fat, and carbs into that amount. But yeah, it's being analytical about it. That's kind of the best way to do it. If you have let's say if for whatever reason you have a really high training day, you're trying to get better at MMA and you're doing weight training session, you got 2 hours. Then yeah, you're going to eat more than if you were just do go in and do abs, which I probably wouldn't change my calories at all. So there's really quick and dirty on that.
Yeah. Okay. So the last actual question is what supplements to take for heart health, and lowering blood pressure. Okay.
Yeah. I'll get you to go with that one too, because I think I actually asked you that question about a good 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, I'll start with the blood pressure one, and in terms of blood pressure, there's definitely a genetic component too. I know people that are thin and in good shape that aren't stressed or that don't have any of the typical markers that have high blood pressure. They just genetically, it's definitely possible. So if you were that person, you may just need medication, to be honest. And the thing about blood pressure now is that a lot of the newer generation blood pressure medications, people tolerate very well. Blood pressure isn't something you want to mess around with. Like, you don't want to walk around with chronically high blood pressure on a regular basis. So it's one of those things where the medication is probably going to be beneficial. There's a lot of there's the beta blockers, there's calcium channel blockers, there's now they're using the ARBs, they're ARBs, call them ARBs, and they are typically very well tolerated. That's probably one of the newish classes of blood pressure meds that if someone's going to get on them, and I always tell, hey, talk to your doctor about getting you on an ARB, and they have some other cardiac benefits as well. So if you are someone that needs a blood pressure medication, you may consider that class of medications. And then, I mean, there are some over-the-counter stuff that can help. Like, a lot of the super common one that tons of people use is carditone. It has an herb. There's an herb in there that actually used to be a prescription medication, to my knowledge. I think it was, but now it's just an herbal medication. So it actually has a pretty potent ingredient in there. It's not going to be anything like any of the newer gen medications. It's something that potentially could keep you in range temporarily. So let's say like during a very stressful period, or during someone that's maybe enhanced, that's using supplementation just periodically, or maybe somebody that's like, even like some of the bigger clients that get very, very heavy in their off season, they might want to use it late in their off season to control blood pressure, because they have just more water retention and things like that. And then just lifestyle stuff. I mean, anytime someone has high blood pressure, if it's just popping up out of nowhere, I'm almost always going to just look at lifestyle stuff too. I mean, is your kidney function good? Are you holding lots of fluid? How is your stress? Are you taking in a lot of stimulants? Things like that. There's a million and one things that can impact your blood pressure too. And it's typically like a lot of people, if I see blood pressure goes up and it hasn't been an issue in the past, it's normally stress related.
Sure.
It's just just typically what I see. So, heart health, man, there's a million different things that could potentially help your heart or cardiovascular system, because there's a lot of components to that. So you could talk about your cholesterol levels. You could talk about like the actual arteries, arterial health. You can talk about the heart. It's the heart muscle itself. There's a lot of stuff. There's some things that I do really like. Ubiquinol's great.
Yes.
It's a good form of CoQ10. You can use that. It complements really well with PQQ, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. They both help with mitochondrial function, help with mitochondrial cell function. And then if you have problems with lipid profile too, citrus bergamot works very well.
Yep.
That's a common one a lot of people use. That's going to help with both LDL levels, but a lot of people tend to struggle with the low HDL levels, and we're balancing the ratio between HDL and LDL. The citrus bergamot is probably just about the best thing you're going to get over the counter. That's going to help with that. I like Arjuna. It's a herb. It's called Arjuna. Helps with blood pressure. It's cardioprotective, helping protect the arterial walls. Vitamin K2 is
for
excellent.
Sure. Yep.
So, fun fact, like the K2 is overlooked by a lot of people, but K2 is one of the only things that can actually help slow down and potentially reverse arterial calcification.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Huge.
I mean,
that's
because
huge.
that's what causes that's what's going to cause the blockages that are going to cause things like heart attacks and strokes, and is the actual oxidation of the fatty acids. So that helps. Even things like
it's really hard to get. Sorry, I was just going to say it's really hard to get K2 in the diet naturally. So that's one of the supplements I really will rely heavily upon is K2. Yeah.
Yes, and then most of the good brands out there that put K2 in their products, they're going to use. There's like several different forms of it. Just make sure you're using a reputable brand, because so they're using the correct form, and then control inflammation. Control inflammation, curcumin works really well.
Yes.
That's another good one that you can add in. I could honestly, I could name a bunch of supplements. I would definitely suggest, if you have any type of, if you're doing anything supplementation wise that's going to impact your heart health, make sure you're preventative. Also, get your blood work done. If you have a history of cardiac events in your family, talk to your doctor about it.
Sure.
Get things. They should be able to give you referrals for things like getting an EKG done if you're getting a little bit older, getting your calcium scores done to actually look at your arteries. So stuff like that. Use your common sense. Don't be afraid to talk to your doctors and stuff about it. Use your supplements. So there you go.
Yeah, those are the ones out of there that you go ahead.
I mean, honestly, that's a whole I could do a whole podcast on those supplements.
Yeah.
But those are some heavy hitters for you.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. I like citrus bergamot exactly for cholesterol. I like curcumin a bunch too. Then vitamin K2. Those are my those are the ones. So when someone asks about the GDAs, the other supplements that Austin just mentioned, I prefer those much more so than the other ones. Just for those are the health goodies that are going to make more of an impact upon your, we'll say, fitness career or your longevity career than something like a GDL. Just, for sure.
I'll tell you, and here's another little tip too for people that practice flexible dieting very liberally too, is don't eat too much, especially not so much in lower calories, but in higher calories. Don't eat too many shitty sources of fat.
Agreed. Yep.
Things that are, because this is in a case where the calorie is not the calorie, because if you're eating things that have a lot of highly inflammatory fats, like the vegetable oils and lots of polyunsaturated or trans fats, all of that shit oxidizes and hardens and sticks to the arterial walls.
Yes.
Okay. That's where your fat selection, especially because if you're in a calorie surplus, you're not burning off those fatty acids in your blood. Okay. So that's when you will accumulate that calcification, those oxidized fats. So pick and choose good quality fatty acids. So it would be another good recommendation.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Because that's when, because a calorie is a calorie in terms of body composition, but a calorie is a calorie is not in terms of health composition, we'll call it. So no, you do have to be aware of that stuff for sure. Micronutrients matter, people.
Yep. 100%. That's it, man. That's all the questions.
Well, geez, no, I really like those ones this week. There was lots of action-packed, valuable goodness in that one today. So, all right. Well, then, obviously, thank you for the questions as always. And from Austin and Marty here at the Mind Body Broadcast, we'll catch you next time.